It's the 14th of February, 2015, and this is episode 187. This show is intended for informational and educational purposes only. What cryptocurrency enables is new, empowering, and exciting, but we're not experts. Just obsessed companions walking the road towards a more peer-to-peer future.
Now, most of us know Adam B. Levine as the leader of the Let's Talk Bitcoin phenomenon, this wonderful media organization that covers a wide variety of subjects, many syndicated shows, many ways of covering this very broad topic of cryptocurrencies. I've known Adam now for almost 3 years, and it's been a fascinating journey because during that time, one of the things I've seen the most is your entrepreneurial spirit and your desire to build new things and encourage innovation and create innovative companies and other things. Now, with Let's Talk Bitcoin, some of that has been expressed in a very public way with the use of the LTB coin, creating one of the first proof of publication tokens and encouraging a community around that. But I know there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. So let's take this opportunity today and talk about some of the other projects where Adam the entrepreneur is active rather than Adam the media mogul.
That was quite a flattering introduction. I appreciate that. You know, all my projects wound up getting kind of wrapped up into one thing, which is trying to perpetuate this thing I'm doing with Let's Talk Bitcoin. And that's Let's Talk Bitcoin as a platform rather than the show. The show is what we're talking on now. The platform, really, we call it the LTB network. The problem that we ran into with LTB coin is kind of what all of this is about. LTB coin was a solution to another problem, and that problem was the bootstrapping problem. It was, how do I, without having funding up front, how do I compensate people in a way that they actually find valuable for work that they're essentially doing as volunteers for me, as you guys do? The solution that I came up with was when tokens came around, tokens being new types of cryptocurrencies that are built on top of another coin's blockchain rather than using their own blockchain themselves. Suddenly, where before you had to launch a whole blockchain and do all of this stuff in order to have the infrastructure to have a token to give to somebody, you didn't have to do that anymore. All you had to do was create one and then distribute it as you see fit. And so that's what we did with LTB coin, and it's been pretty effective for that. And the value proposition behind it is kind of binary. It's a free token. There's no value that goes into creating it, and so it has no inherent value. But what it is it's a token that I being the editor-in-chief of the LTB network, have given to people and have said that the LTB network and all of our affiliated properties and things like that will honor this and will give it value within our network. So it might not have value over at somebody else's, store, but at our store it does. And so that means even if, it doesn't have value somewhere else, it does have value with us. And so the market has to kind of weigh and make a judgment about how valuable it is relative to how much utility it has. It also is something that locks contribution to time. So if you contributed to the show a year ago and I gave you LTB coin at that point and it wasn't worth anything, but you also didn't get rid of it. You chose to hold on to it. And 2 years later, the network is a wild success and LTB coin has become quite valuable. Well, your amount of LTB coin that you earned back then didn't change. Its value could have changed though. And so in that way, it kind of is like it's free for us to give it to people because we have no cost. But on the off chance that what we're doing does succeed, they get reward that we didn't have to pay for up front, where we were most vulnerable to spending too much money doing things like that. Are you with me on this? This is the impetus behind why we did LTB coin, was because it was a way to give valuable credit, and credit in that, like, I credit you for helping me to get to the place that we are now, and I want to reward you. And this was a way that we could do it that would lock it so that if we're successful in the future, even if you stop working with us, you still would have seen a share of that success.
One of the most interesting things I find about LTB coin is the proof of publication and proof of comment, proof of consumption, essentially all of these different models by which participation in the community and adding value to the community is aligned with earning this essentially loyalty point, right? Because That's what it is. But unlike algorithms we see for proof of work consensus or other tokens, which are tied to perhaps mining with some hardware or some specialized technical knowledge, on the LTB network, the reward for the token comes from participating in conversations, posting comments that are highly rated on the forums, listening to shows and catching token words that are used to show participation, and for those who are producing syndicated content, hosting or producing or participating in shows. So the reward mechanism is very closely tied to the desired outcome, which is building, sustaining, and adding value to a community over time.
Yeah, that's the general idea behind all of this, is that community is what is the important word there. LTB and Let's Talk Bitcoin, is a community that's largely focused on cryptocurrency. But cryptocurrency isn't the extent of community, and the things that we're building, the tools that we're building to enable our cryptocurrency-based community are things that ultimately have application for all types of community. And I've done a couple of interviews recently, and I've said, we used to have town halls where business could be conducted, but that kind of is the wrong way of thinking about it. It's more like when we meet in person in a public place, we still have personal agency. And we still have the ability to, collect with another person in a dark corner and conduct whatever business that we want, just using the platform as what it is, a platform, a location. So it's not so much that we used to have town halls and now we don't. It's that we used to be able to interact with each other like we can in real life in person. And that, has kind of gone away because the internet doesn't do ownership well and it doesn't do money well. And so those are really important things when it comes to interacting with another person. What things like LTB coin represent are the ability to have private and trustless tokens that don't cost an arm and a leg to generate, and so means you can do kind of arbitrary things with them. So our arbitrary thing was, like you said, creating a rewards program and sort of doing that as the basis for all of this. When we started this process, when we created LTB coin, and it was one of the first tokens out there was literally nothing that you could do with the tokens. And it's not that there was no place you could spend them. It was that there was no way to even administer such a program. There was no way to sell tokens. There was no way to automatically redeem tokens. There's no way to use them to schedule stuff. All of these things that are really like basic ways to use money, and you couldn't do them with tokens because nobody bothered to create that tool yet. It's been exciting for me for the last month because, we've been in this kind of quiet development mode, but now we're having a bunch of different prototype tools roll out, things that allow you to essentially do all of those kind of basic things. And importantly, it doesn't just impact LTB coin, it impacts any token that's built on the counterparty system.
Adam, I can see the difficulty in getting something like this launched because it really does require those infrastructure type tools, like the ability to, exchange and do a sort of a shapeshift thing in and out of LTB coin and other stuff like that you've been working on recently. But I have to say, even without most of those tools in place, I really think it has actually solved the problem or it has enhanced the community of the platform. Because what I see when I go on letstalkbitcoin.com is the podcasts, the articles, they are full of like non-spammy, non-trolly comments. And that is something that it's a huge problem on other websites where you can't get people to engage. And if you do, then they're engaging in ways that are not really desirable. So I really think that LTB coin has actually enriched the community or sort of solved that problem, even without a lot of infrastructure in place already.
There's also an interesting juxtaposition to the platform that Reddit has built and their brief and now aborted attempt to enter the cryptocurrency space. Reddit is very much about solving this problem of signal-to-noise ratio in public forums using the upvote, downvote mechanism. But the problem is that karma is fickle and has no value and can be easily manipulated on a large scale. At the same time, Reddit has their gold platform, which is Reddit Gold used for subscription and various other things, but the two are not connected. So you can't use gold for moderation or vice versa. And then briefly, they flirted with the idea of introducing cryptocurrencies, hired Ryan Charles to implement some of these ideas, and then there was a big reshuffle, some changes in their executive team, and then finally they let Ryan go and dumped that project because they were no longer interested in cryptocurrencies. This is obviously a problem that needs to be solved on the internet. People are already looking at cryptocurrencies and trying to do something very similar to what LTB is doing in a broader, more mainstream context, and it's not easy, obviously.
It's not a panacea, though. I want to be very clear about that, is that, yes, Stephanie, you're right. I think that it has had an overall positive impact on the community as a whole. It certainly has. We have a large Russian and Indonesian demographic now, actually, that uses the forums, largely because of our rewards program. So it's sort of interesting to see these niches develop. And what actually happens is that because a program like this attracts a lot of opportunists, you actually have a phenomenon where the opportunists know all the tricks that the other people are going to play. So they start calling each other out on them and making it very difficult for anybody to operate in a manner that doesn't really comply with the rules, because since everything is relative, right? If I have 10 likes and then you get, 11 likes, that comes out of the same pool where it's all relative, just like Bitcoin mining is. Your strength is relative to the strength of the rest of the network. If someone gets an extra 20 likes, and that actually does impact you in an indirect way. The community, to a certain extent, when they're incentivized because they all have to share, and the assumption is that everyone is playing by the rules, actually does do their part to enforce the rules, even when administration isn't watching. It's not a panacea in that because we're incentivizing people to do this, we're paying them to a certain extent. They have an incentive in there that isn't naturally in there. It's been this balancing act where we, tune it. But another thing that having a token of the realm kind of gives you is the ability to have fees that don't necessarily require people to pay you money because you're giving it to them first. So I'm talking with a writer who approached me a couple days ago who wants to write a series of travel pieces, and I'm sending everybody through our automated system at this point just because otherwise I tend to be a bottleneck. And our automated system, when you create a new account at Let's Talk Bitcoin, you can submit an article, and in order to do that, you need to buy a submission credit with LTB coin. It costs 1,000 LTB coin, which is about like 0.003 Bitcoin or something like that at the moment, current prices. If you are a normal user on the website, then over the course of about a week, because we do weekly disbursements, where, as Andreas, you said earlier, some of the weekly new LTB coin that are created, I believe it's 25%, are distributed among all the community, commented and did things like that over the course of that week relative to their contribution. The amount that a normal person has been getting is about 3,000 or 4,000 LTB coin. So you can join our community, leave a couple of comments and participate for a week, basically. At the end of the week, you get a couple of thousand LTB coin with which you can use to buy a couple of submission credits. Once you have a submission credit, then you can create your article, and there's a private communication channel for you and the editors that you're working with on it. When it gets published, you earn about 100,000 LTB coin, and then about 3 or 4 weeks later, you get a proportional share based on how popular your article was and how well it performed relative to all of the other ones. So that's kind of the idea, is that somebody who's just coming in and wants to spam the comment system, well, sure, they could go through all that time, but they don't actually want to be part of the community. They just want to maximize their impact so they get paid as much as they can. Well, our system actually incentivizes people because in order to make the most LTB coin from the system itself, you have to create content. And it's not just create any content, you have to create content that actually makes it all the way through our editorial system. So that's really what we've been trying to do, is trying to take this natural opportunistic thing where people, like when a new coin comes out, people want to get some of that new coin because it's speculative and it's cheap and it could go well. And this is the same thing, except instead of money, really what we want is people to channel creative energy.
It's not really worth it to try to just get a bunch of LTB coin, because you'll never, you can't really trade enough time to be able to get enough LTB coin to do anything really significant on the platform unless you create content, and then that's not spamming.
Right. And I mean, the other way that you can do it is you can buy it. I mean, you can buy LTB coin, and that accomplishes the same purpose, because if the only people who we distribute LTB coin to are people who participate in our system, whether it be from, someone who's creating content or someone who's just reading or listening to podcasts, those are people who we want to reward. And it's, and if you buy it from them or somebody that they bought it from or somebody that they bought it from, then that still is patronizing our ecosystem.
So if I sold all of my LTB coin to Goldman Sachs and gave them the ability to take over the platform, basically flood all of the comments with pro-Federal Reserve statist comments and pro-Goldman Sachs propaganda, Could I do that?
No, you actually couldn't, and it's interesting to think about why. You don't actually have any power within the platform that the platform doesn't grant you. So while something like Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency that is neutral, let's talk Bitcoin or any other deployment of a platform, I guess I could say, is inherently not neutral. And so the values that make up that community are led, in the case of Let's Talk Bitcoin, by my personal sensibilities. One day that might change. One day it might be completely driven by the community. But for now, I'm sort of the caretaker of that. And so it's not just about having LTB coin and then being able to do whatever you want. It's about LTB coin is like the limiting factor to a certain extent. But having an account in good standing, that's still required in order to do all this stuff. You know, if you spam, then it's your account that is punished, not your wallet. We don't have control of your wallet. Indeed, you could take your wallet, and if you wanted to behave better, then you could hook it up to another account that isn't banned, start over from the beginning in terms of reputation or whatever other types of systems get layered on top of, and then use those funds there. But if your behavior is still the same, then the outcome will probably still be the same. So, but even then, even if you're completely rejected by the platform and you've got all these tokens and you're completely rejected by the platform, you have an option, and it's to sell the token to somebody who is willing to participate under the rules. It's like if you were buying Bitcoin, but you were only willing to, use it by, doing transactions that violate the protocol. Like, yeah, sure, you can own them, but they're not useful to you anymore because you're not working within the system.
That actually segues nicely into something I wanted to bring up, which is that what do you say to people who are like, well, the whole value of LTB coin just depends on Adam's rule that you have to use LTB coin to do stuff on the LTB platform. In other words, like, are you basically the Federal Reserve chairman of LTB coin? Are you basically like the dictator at the top? And if you go away, then what's going to happen to LTB coin and the platform?
So if I go away, then yeah, the future of LTB coin is very uncertain. I think that's the nature of user-created assets, and I think that it should be very clearly articulated because that's what they are. They are very centralized tokens built on decentralized infrastructure. And so the decentralized infrastructure means that, again, I have very little in the way of cost, so my motives actually can be very good. Like, there's no reason for me to do anything that would be negative to the token because, again, I have the most of it. So there's some incentives like that. These platforms and tokens that are built around them are inherently based on trust. They're based on the trust that I'm going to keep doing the things that I say, that I actually have the values that I say I do, and there's transparency too. You can look back at the history of LTB coin and see that so far we've been very true to what it is that we said that we were going to do. And sometimes the numbers have varied by small amounts because we're talking about several millions, and Counterparty has had some issues sometimes doing exact amounts. But what we said in the beginning has been pretty much true straight on through. And so people have to judge by that. And really, again, like, you can see it with all kinds of things, with Paycoin, stuff like that. You have very little more than reputation in any of these things, even when you're talking about a blockchain.
It probably helps that you're not pushing it as like a make money kind of thing. I think people understand.
Yeah, I think my stance has been really helpful in all of this, being very clear, that we're not selling it. It's not equity. It's not, like, trying to keep people's expectations really reasonable. Because again, the point of LTB coin was largely to figure out what these problems are. It means that lots of people can interact with us in lots of ways. Whereas if we only accept Bitcoin, or if we only accept cryptocurrencies that are traded on markets and have real value, then only people who have money to buy those things can interact with us. And that's not necessarily all of everybody. And again, with this way, we have the option to have this rewards program act as an option. And it's our preferred option because making it our preferred option gives it more value than not making it our preferred option, right? If we say you could buy this with Bitcoin or you could buy this with 20% more value of LTB coin, then sure, that might appeal to people who already have lots of LTB coin, but it wouldn't do very much for the price because there's no reason to buy it. But if on the other hand, we say you could buy this for, 1 Bitcoin, or you could buy it for 20% less with LTB coin, then suddenly people who are interested in it and want the best price have an incentive to instead buy LTB coin first in order to achieve that better price, which patronizes the entire ecosystem and, again, kind of powers that engine of growth. I don't know. All of this has been made more difficult, again, by the fact that I decided to build this platform from the ground up. And so this has been difficult, but now we're, again, starting to get to a place where some of the really cooler features are starting to come into place. So something that's going to be rolling out next month is going to be our collaborative editorial system. And essentially what this will let you do, and again, the whole idea here is to make it so the platform is just that. It's a platform that lets its users interact with each other, and then through those interactions, create stuff and also be able to, have economic interactions too at the same time. So the idea would be this. You start a new article, right? Or you post a podcast or whatever. Instead of just it being about you posting it, you also either list credits, right? So you put in the credits, you put in what the person did on each one, and then next to it you put a split or a fixed amount of LTB coin or Bitcoin or anything else for that matter that is essentially contractually negotiated between those parties, and it can go back and forth for each person. So while a simple thing might, be a writer and an editor, something more complicated, might be a couple of different writers and a couple of editors and a proofreader. And so you can have kind of all of that automated built into the system. And so because we get all that information in that initial creation process, we can then take all of that and encode it into a single address that then routes based on the logic essentially that we asked you to give us about who should get what. So we're getting to a place where the platform really, really steps into the background, and what happens is it's just about people interacting, and they can interact with each other in all of these rich ways that to this point they haven't been able to do. You could do volunteer, but you couldn't do anything besides that.
Yeah, I know that tip splitter is something you've been working on for quite a while. Just getting back to the idea of sort of trust and centralization, I want to talk about this a little more because the argument that's put forward by Daniel Krasowitz and a lot of other people like the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute guys is that with app coins, they're always going to be second fiddle to something like Bitcoin. People are always going to prefer to use Bitcoin instead of some app coin because it's like, why would you want a gift certificate to a specific store that you can only use there when you could actually have cash, which you could use anywhere? It all depends, like the whole value of LTB coin depends on it being the in-game currency of the platform. LTB coin hasn't been sold through Let's Talk Bitcoin, but I know there's something coming where it's going to be pretty easy to exchange between LTB coin and Bitcoin. Does that diminish the value of LTB coin if you can easily exchange it, or does it take away at all from that sort of that rule that you have to use LTB coin? Or, I mean,
well, the rule isn't that you have to use LTB coin. Again, that's what I'm trying to convey here, Stephanie, is that.
But then it has no value. Like if you don't.
Well, but that's not true. It does have a value if it's useful to you and it replaces money. Again, like does a paper coupon have value to you? The question is, does it save you money for something you're going to do anyways? I would argue that if it replaces money for something that you're going to spend money on, if you don't have that, then that performs the function of money. And what is money besides performing the function of money?
Right, but a coupon only does that because the store agrees to give you a discount if you use the coupon as opposed to cash. So
no, it's not. I mean, like what I'm saying is that functionally it's about replacing the utility. The discount is besides that. The discount, you're right. I mean, given the choice between money that works everywhere or money that works one place, I think that most people would pick money that works everywhere. But given the choice between money that works everywhere or money that works one place that you know that you're about to spend money at and that achieves you a 10% better value than you'd get with any other type of currency, then I would argue that the math is a little bit different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. But again, it all still depends on that rule that LTB coin is better because you make it better on the platform. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, but what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying, is that vulnerable to being changed? Like, does it give you an incentive to make it harder for people to exchange out of LTB coin or whatever, or to not make LTB a platform that can use other types of cryptocurrency because you want to maintain that advantage for LTB coin and give it value?
So, Stephanie, if you go to letstalkbitcoin.com/vend or click the buy tokens button on the top menu, then it'll take you to our SwapBot prototype, which is what I think you were talking about. And you already can buy LTB coin from us. It just is way more expensive than it would be if you were buying it from a market. The current algorithm, and again, this is totally changing. This is just a prototype tool. We take the current market price at Poloniex, which is the highest volume exchange out there right now. The APIs for dealing with this stuff are difficult, so we've had kind of limited options. We'll probably wind up creating our own price feed service again for this reason, because we need the stability. But the relevant part here is that we take the 24-hour high price and then add 20% on top of that. So LTB coin, when we sell it to people from the vending machine, is not designed to be like a trading tool. It's designed to be, I would like to achieve some of that discount that that you're offering, and this is an easier way for me to do it than having to go through all of that other rigmarole. So you said about not wanting to accept other tokens. This is part of, again, what we're building with Tokenly. I really, really believe in a token agnostic ecosystem in the future. I think that most projects will have some type of token associated, not necessarily equity coins. I do not think that is necessarily it. I think they'll be tied to specific actions because, again, when it comes to selling a service, attaching it to a token means that you can sell the service anywhere to anybody. They don't have to be a member of your service, and yet, so long as they have that token, they have a prepaid thing that they could use with your service. So it actually has enormous advantages in that context. So if you look at the SwapBot prototype, you'll see that right now for LTB coin, we actually accept not just BTC, but we also accept XCP, which is Counterparty's token, the storage coin, and the swarm coin. And if you select one of the other tokens that we sell there besides LTB coin, because LTB coin is like, that's our, it's the closest thing we have to a liquid currency, but we also have redeemable tokens too, right? So you can get a sponsor token, and that has a fixed price, $300 in dollars, that then floats against all of these other currencies. And if you buy it for LTB coin, then you get a 40% discount off of the $300 in terms of the amount of LTB coin you'd have to spend. If you spend Bitcoin, you would get a 20% discount because we prefer that to dollars too. And if you spend, again, XCP, Storage, or Swarm, which are the three non-standard tokens that we're currently accepting, then you would pay 10% more than so $330 worth, because again, they're less liquid and so we don't value them as much. So I think that that is something that is not unique to us. I think, in fact, everybody will do this, and that there will be lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of personal, swap machines out there, basically, that when you have tokens that you want to get rid of, this will be a way to sell them in a retail environment. And you won't just want to accept Bitcoin because that limits you. You want to accept all of these different things and then just weight them and value them however you see fit. And again, that's personal too, not personal to the platform. That's personal to the person creating each instance of a swap bot. I mean, I don't argue that they're centralized. I argue that they are centralized, but I argue that there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yeah, I see your argument. I just think it's important to put that idea out there because a lot of people are going to be thinking about it and may even be really skeptical about it because they do see the centralization. But you're saying that it's my party and I could do what I want to, essentially. Right.
Well, I'm saying that it's to my advantage to be the guy who I am, right? I mean, even if you guys didn't know me, again, like it's all about reputation with this stuff. It's all about the journey that we've been on, that I've been on. I'm trying to figure out how to do all this stuff, how to make a podcast that works, and to do it in a way that was completely unlike what anybody else was trying.
That actually goes into the next topic. And I appreciate your creativity and trying to identify the problems in podcasting and building a platform like this and saying, what are some creative solutions using cryptocurrency that we can do to solve these? Like, it's really cool to see that. And I'm sure some of the ideas are going to pan out better than others. And it's all just a big experiment, like you've said a bunch of times. Really interesting to see how it's playing out. My other big question about LTB coin and even like Tokenly and everything that you're doing is, I've had some people actually approach me and say, hey, I want to advertise on Let's Talk Bitcoin. How do I do that? And I'm like, I don't know what to tell them because the way that, the vision for LTB coin is to have advertisers, be purchasing their advertising with LTB coin and sort of directly paying the content creators on the platform to get LTB coin and then use it to buy advertising and to have people kind of swapping content with LTB coin and putting content in each other's shows and articles. But that's not really there yet. And it's just confusing, right? Especially for advertisers or potential sponsors or whatever, or people who have never done anything like this before. There's not really a good guide that tells them how to do it. And I fear that they may see it and get really intimidated and say, screw this. I don't want to deal with all this stuff. So what plans do you have to make it easier to use for people who don't want to hassle with it and don't care to bother with understanding how to do this?
Yeah, so that's a totally valid complaint, and it's one that I hear a lot. We've been moving really fast with this stuff, and a lot of what has happened has been automation. So even now, compared to 2 weeks ago, I think that you would have a different experience, maybe not, again, as easy as it will eventually be, but even now, if you go to the sponsor tool, then it's a lot simpler than it was before. Before, there wasn't anybody to talk to. It was a manual process. I had you email my wife, and and we would go through the process. But now we've got standards published up front, and we again have the ability. Like if you wanted to sponsor, Let's Talk Bitcoin, then you have the ability for sponsor package A. Currently, that would cost one sponsor 515,000 LTB coin, 1.0652 Bitcoin, 10,342 storage, or 26,378 Swarm, or 146 XCP. So there are a lot of options. And again, that's something that's going to grow. And also dollars, of course.
Why storage and Swarm?
They're examples. They're examples of projects who have tokens that actually do trade and that we're compatible with at the moment. Because again, we're only compatible with counterparty assets. The eventual goal for the platform, so you can think about counterparty or Bitcoin as lower level platforms. LTB is really like a third level platform above that. And so we actually have the ability eventually to take multiple types of protocols like BitShares and other things and plug them into our system so that tokens can actually interact with each other, even though they're on different protocols, because we're that higher level platform and have the ability to kind of act as a connecting layer. So my background is sales. The sales that I did was not sales where you stand behind a counter and you sell to people. I did distribution. So I would sell cases of thousands of forks and spoons made out of biodegradable or eco-friendly plastic products to colleges and things like that. So I'm very used to this sort of idea that sales can happen without the end user ever actually being involved because they don't want to deal with that sort of thing anyways. What we've built, again, we're built around the idea of automation and vending machines. So if you go to a vending machine, if you go to the Buy Tokens vending machine on Let's Talk Bitcoin, and you want to sell a sponsorship, you're somebody who knows that there's this sponsor that would love to sponsor Let's Talk Bitcoin. They have the budget to do it. So you see that the sponsor price is 1.0653 Bitcoin or 515,000 LTB coin. You say, oh, okay, I can take advantage of the fact that there's a price difference here, use some LTB coin and get a lower price, and then go and charge the client the retail price, and I can make my money in the difference between those two prices. This is something that we're pushing forward both in terms of these discounts that are kind of natural and built in, but we're also exploring this concept I'm calling roll coins. Just real briefly, token controlled access is the idea that tokens, you don't have to spend them, you can just have them. And if a website can see that you have them and it knows that you own that address, then it can give you special privileges or access based on what tokens you have. So the idea is token controlled access. Roll coins take that concept and pivot it a small amount so that if, like, I'm somebody who sells ads and I talk to you, Stephanie, and you sell advertisements on one of your shows, and I'm like, hey, I want to sell ads for you. Can you give me a discount so that I can make a little bit more money than just going through this normal system? So you say, yes, here's a coin that gives you a 10% discount above what everybody else gets. That goes into my wallet that's associated with my account. And when I visit the vending machine sees that token, knows that I get a 30%, an extra 10% discount, which means a total of a 30% discount beyond Bitcoin. And when I pay, it treats me as if I had paid that extra more in order to simulate that discount. You don't actually have to know the person who asks you for that discount coin. Somebody could actually buy it. You could just say, hey, anybody who's willing to spend 5 Bitcoin, becoming a redistributor for me, who's willing to give me 5 Bitcoin in order to get that discount, then can make up that money by selling these higher priced things that they're able to buy from me at a lower price. By leaving money on the table, if it is in fact a desirable and well-priced service, then we can incentivize people who would otherwise not have the ability to profit from our success to do just that and to use their LTB coin or to take advantage of the system to essentially arbitrage the difference between the difficulty in using our system with the difference in price between those using it at this kind of retail level where they pay the normal price because they're not jumping through our hoops versus people who are willing to really intimately know our system. So in that way, we kind of turn our hardcore users into potential salespeople and redistributors.
And that gap would probably narrow over time as the platform gets easier to use and it's developed more.
Right, exactly. And as people see success too. I mean, that's the other thing, of course, is that like if somebody is like, hey, I'm making a bunch of money doing this, then other people are going to be like, oh. And indeed, we've already kind of seen that. I was just talking with Tatiana Moroz, who's starting essentially a group sales organization focused on the Bitcoin media space, and also Dave Allen, who's doing media relations for the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. We're going to have more sponsors in the near future than we have in the past, and it's not necessarily because the sponsors are coming to us. It's because our users are using the system and being opportunistic with it and are actually starting to build businesses themselves based on it. Today's episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin receives support from CryptoKit.com, the easiest, fastest way to send Bitcoins right from your browser. That's KRYPTOKIT.com if you'd like to learn more. Today's magic word is tokenly. That's TOKENLY. Tokenly. Also, announcement, we've extended magic words from 4 days after each new episode is published to a full week. So you've got until the 21st of February to visit letstalkbitcoin.com or the Let's Talk Bitcoin iPhone app to enter it for your share of the listener rewards. And quick update, this episode was recorded a few weeks ago. Yesterday, Nick rolled out the new collaborative editorial system in its first form, and it's now available for use. So now when you write for Let's Talk Bitcoin, you can use the contributor button in the upper right corner of each submission to invite other users to contribute to your piece, define their role, and offer them an automatic split of the LT Bitcoin rewards that article goes on to earn. The last time I put out a call for content, we were totally overwhelmed. This time, we're finally ready. If you have trouble getting started, head to the forums at letstalkbitcoin.com or email Adam at letstalkbitcoin.com. Thanks for listening.
One of the criticisms I've heard often, this is kind of generally towards LTB as a network. We spend more of our time nowadays talking about altcoins instead of talking about Bitcoin. Explain to me your fascination about these alt tokens and Tokenly and LTB coin, etc. Is this all alternative systems to Bitcoin? Do you see it as synergistic with Bitcoin? How does this have to do with Let's Talk Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think it's entirely synergistic with all of this stuff. Again, it's about ownership. Bitcoin is difficult for a lot of people because it puts ownership back into money, where normally we're used to having the use of our money. We don't necessarily own it, and there are certain circumstances under which it isn't actually ours. It's actually much the same with property, too. You know, like physical, real-life property is yours unless you don't pay the taxes, and then, you know, you can actually lose it. So the question is, do you own it at all? Tokens solve the problem without incurring the cost. It is exactly what it is. It's like a ball bearing, because a ball bearing is a very physical item. With cryptocurrency, you have the ability to take this physicality and impart it onto data because you have this continuous record. Money is complicated. Money is political, and there are all kinds of issues surrounding it. And at the beginning of last year, you know, after the BitLicense thing started to make the rounds, I really came to the conclusion that the trouble we're going to have is going to be if people are like, crypto is money. If crypto is money, then we have a real freaking issue on our hands, because that means that it's going to be treated like money. And I've said this before too. It's like if you legislate the treatment of paper as if all pieces of paper are doctors' scripts that can, you know, grant permission within the system that we have to give you controlled drugs. If you control every piece of paper in that same way, sure, you can say, oh, well, you know, it's all paper, so why not apply that standard? But the use that it has is actually intrinsically important to how much freedom we should have. You know, and one can make the argument that doctor script shouldn't be controlled in any event, but that's sort of beside the point for the example.
I just want to bring this back to Bitcoin. From my understanding, all of these tokens essentially are kind of a constellation, an ecosystem around Bitcoin. They're all exchangeable for Bitcoin, and they all owe their existence to Bitcoin, and they're very much derive most of their value through direct tradability with Bitcoin. They're just trying to solve other problems or fulfill other roles for which Bitcoin is not designed to solve.
Well, one thing they give you is stability, Andreas. That's an excellent example of this, is that, like, for example, if you want to sponsor Let's Talk Bitcoin, then you don't really know. Our price is denominated in dollars. So if you have an amount of Bitcoin that you want to spend, it's to your advantage to buy a sponsor token, because then you know that whenever you're ready to redeem it, you've already paid for it. You've already dealt with the volatility, and so you've essentially locked it into this form that it doesn't need to be transmissible back into Bitcoin, although it will be. It just needs to be redeemable for the thing that you wanted. You wouldn't have bought it if you didn't want the thing. So do you see how it takes the volatility out of that type of a transaction? It's not a currency. It's like a redeemable object almost.
It's a token, or it's a gift card. It's a gift check.
Right, exactly. It's a token. I've only really talked about the super basic stuff here, but even like talking about one of our Gen 2 types of use cases, when you reserve a hotel room right now, what happens is you give them your credit card information. They take your credit card information, check to see they can actually make a payment against it, that it's a valid number most of the time, and then they store it. You don't actually have anything outside of if you show up and it hasn't been booked by somebody else or taken by somebody else because they had more immediate demand, you can pay for it at that point, and then at that point you own it. But if you were to take this same concept and say, okay, when we book hotel rooms, instead what we're doing is we are prepaying for our hotel rooms, either with tokens or anything else, then you can essentially say, once you've booked it, you own it. And once you own it, you can do with what you want with it. So if you say booked 2 months in advance and then decided, a week before that actually you couldn't go, why can't you put your room back up for sale because you own it for that night, that time period? And if you think that there's a convention in town that it's going to make it so that's a really, really high demand and expensive room and there aren't too many left, then why not charge more than the hotel charged for it initially? And again, like with tokens, you can set up systems where that transaction happens entirely between the person who's booked the room and the person who wants to book the room, from them now. And the person that transaction that happened before, the one that happened between the hotel who owns the room and the person who initially booked the room, the hotel is still paid. They don't have to care in this situation at all. It's just about creating situations where you can have rules that everybody in the system can follow, and then even the platform gains a level of freedom from responsibility about what to do with it, right? They're no longer responsible for giving refunds because it's the person's ability to put the room back up for rent, and so long as the new guest complies with the rules of the hotel and all this other stuff, then it'll work out fine.
I've sort of thought about this quite a bit because I think one of your big ideas with this whole token leak company and like your vision perhaps for the future, and a lot of other people share this vision. It's like in Ethereum, it's in any kind of platform that has like smart contracts or token controlled access or anything like that, is the idea of like, well, let's automate all this stuff that's currently being done by humans, and it can be done so much more fairly, more efficiently according to these rules. But there are some things that like I'm just a bit skeptical that they are more efficiently done by rules or by code than by a human being. Like, for instance, with the hotel reservation thing, I mean, sometimes you just need a human touch. There are special situations, right? You need a certain kind of bed or something like that in the hotel, or you are allergic to feathers or whatever. Sometimes there are just circumstances where you kind of need to be able to talk to a person and work it out that way. And it's actually more efficient than trying to go through like a token or something like that.
There certainly might be examples where that is true. I don't think the example that you gave is really one of them. I think that all of that stuff is really just about interface. It's just about, select your things over here, and then it only shows you rooms that fit those conditions. Or if you have special conditions, then you write a note. The one leap you really have to make, the only thing that doesn't exist, are token-controlled door locks. Okay? So imagine you have an application on your phone that manages your token keys, and door locks at this hotel are controlled by tokens. Okay. There is only one door key per room. So there's only one door key per room because tokens are callable. You can create, again, the hotel creates and administers and, has the issuing address for this key token for this room that we're talking about. When somebody books the room, essentially what they're doing is they are instructing the system once their payment has gone through that send to this address, right? Send to this person's access wallet this key that then gives them access at this time, and then recall it on this date when it is over. Whenever somebody else needs to use the key can be recalled and sent back, again, by the hotel.
Well, like if you're inside your room and you want room service to come and deliver food, you would send the token maybe to the room service person or whatever.
If you wanted them to be able to open your door. Again, the example here is really more along the lines of maids. Like the maid can't get in until you send the key to the maid, and that can happen automatically if you want. Again, it can be like you have to opt out in order for that not to happen. But it also means that, again, nobody can fake your room key because it's a cryptographic token, and there really is only one.
That sounds like a better system. I agree. I think that would be more efficient. But the thing is, like, do you think a hotel would go for that? Like, I don't know that they would like the idea of subleasing and being able to basically put your token up on the market and kind of like it would be more efficient, but they wouldn't like it.
I don't necessarily know that they would care. I mean, again, if you think about it, it removes so many barriers. If you get your key emailed to your phone at your check-in time, then you don't need a front desk.
But you do need a front desk because there's always something, I don't know.
You need help. You need help is what you need. You need the ability you need customer service. You need the ability for, if something goes wrong, somebody is there and able to deal with it. And I'm not saying that's going to go away. I'm saying a lot of this stuff where we already have automation. It's just human-powered automation. And because of that, it has all of the weaknesses of humans built into it.
I'm trying to think of a good example where, well, okay, how about proof of publishing or on the Let's Talk Bitcoin platform? Like there's a bunch of rules that a podcast kind of has to meet. There's a bunch of requirements that a podcast has to meet in order to be considered valid for the proof of publishing kind of algorithm. And it's really hard to automate that. You know, it's hard to say, okay, well, if it's published on 4:00 p.m. on Thursday instead of the agreed upon 3:00, then it's not going to get paid for that week because it was an hour late, and the rules are the rules. And it has one curse word in it that wasn't bleeped out, so it doesn't count. And like, how are you going to figure that out with a computer? We just don't have the technology really to be able to do that yet.
I'm not saying that everything should be automated. I'm saying the menial things like sending and receiving of keys and monetary transactions. Those are things that don't need to go through human hands. Those are things that can all be automated now. And because cryptocurrency tokens are just as transmissible as cryptocurrency is, and it's all scriptable, so it's all automatable, you can essentially take all of these kind of hard things that really humans shouldn't have any hand in anyways, and automate all of that. So you can think about it like a framework where the roles are already mapped out, and the rewards and incentive structures are already mapped out, and everything is locked in place as far as that is concerned, and it's predictable so that humans can't impact it. But humans still power the thing. Humans still make all of the decisions, fill all of the crucial roles. This is not some sort of strong AI. This is, again, just an empty structure that can be triggered by humans performing prescribed roles that make sense within a given system. Again, like a hotel, right? Getting your key, checking in, as far as I'm concerned, think about it okay, so instead of thinking about it like it's a hotel, think about it for Airbnb, right? Airbnb is great, but as much fun as it is, going to the broom closet on the 3rd floor and reaching behind the pipe up to the top of the thing in order to get your key, that's fantastic. But it's the same thing there. This is applicable at every single level, right? All you need is the door lock that is controlled.
Sure. It's all fun and games until the cops can automatically open your door.
Well, but that's the point, is that they can't open the door because they don't have your key unless you send it to them. And they don't have the issuing authority to call it back.
Well, don't you think that would be built in, a back door? I mean,
but it's not.
It's the easiest.
There's a company that does this already. It's called, I believe, Airlock. They have built a digital door locking system that is triggered by transactions on an Ethereum contract. So this is certainly not science fiction. I do find, however, that it is very culture specific, in that if you walk into a hotel in San Francisco, for example, or in the Bay Area, you're going to see a registration desk with one person behind it and 5 check-in automation kiosks, where if you want, you don't have to talk to the person. You can just walk to one of the kiosks, check in, and it will drop your hotel key cards in a slot below, and then you can check out by dropping them off again at a checkout kiosk on the way out. Now, contrast that, for example, to a stay I had in Hong Kong, where there were 2 people for opening the taxi door on arrival, 2 people for opening the hotel door. Then there was a reception desk staffed by at least a dozen people. Then there were about half a dozen people at the valet bell desk to handle your luggage. And there was 2 people, no joke, in the elevator who were pressing buttons on either side. So, for that culture, the idea that you would actually have to interact with a machine on a personal level would be a failure in customer service. And there are people there to press the buttons and pick up your luggage and carry it, whisk it away to your room so that you don't have to touch anything, who will open the door to your car, who will open the door to your hotels. Essentially, between the taxi and the front door of my room, I engaged at least 20 or 25 people in customer service.
Well, but that's automation too, isn't it, Andreas?
That's 1.5 billion population in China. That's what it is. It's a culturally different trade-off between labor and automation. And in fact, you see that across Southeast Asia, you see that in India, you see that in many places where if it costs $100 to put in a computer, for the same price, you can hire 10 people. It's easier to just hire 10 people. And in fact, part of the argument here is that if you continue down this road, eventually you're going to have the check-in kiosk and the checkout kiosk, but then you're also going to have the homeless, unemployed, formerly concierge desk attendant outside the hotel accosting you on the way in because you've rendered them obsolete. All I'm saying is there is a certain cultural bias to this desire for automating every last ounce of human interaction out of something as simple as a hotel stay.
The thing that I am attempting to emphasize here is ownership and when the transaction actually happens. Does it happen when you make the decision that you're going to do it? Because with tokens, it can. Whereas with the conventional system, it cannot. It does not actually happen until you're there actually doing it. And so because of that, you're vulnerable to a lot of things because of that, because you didn't actually make the purchase. You didn't actually buy the thing. To the East Asian population argument, I would argue that is automation too. It is just automation where the humans are the cheapest type of computer that you can find in order to do it. And so they're the ones who do the job.
No, but again, I don't see that.
What you have to keep in your head during all of this is that I'm not saying that this is how existing hotels are going to be. I'm not saying they're going to be like, hey, this is a great idea, we should all do this. I'm saying this is a better model if you were going to build the concept of a hotel or the concept of any type of stay from the ground up. Yes, absolutely, culturally. We are built in with the fact that we want people to take care of us and we want people to service us and all of that. But if you were going to just look at this abstractly, then I think that the arguments in favor of it are much greater than the ones against it.
I certainly can see the value in a system that's highly automated using tokens like this, and I can see how it's better than a lot of aspects of the current system. But I think in any discussion about something like this, it is important to mention that sort of human touch. I've heard it said before, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could just code people into good behavior? And that scares me. Right? I mean, think about that for a minute. That's a really scary statement.
What I like are incentives. There are lots, and again, like if we go back to a system of real capitalism, then the incentives are all already built in. And that's the same thing here, is that using these types of systems, we can create systems where capitalism is not like an optional thing, but it's just the way that it is because you can't do anything but. I mean, sure, you can try, it's just not very effective.
What do you mean by capitalism?
I mean unstoppable competition, and in an environment of unstoppable competition. So Tokenly is an open source project built from the ground up to kind of enable all of this nonsense. And by nonsense, again, I mean that whatever type of Rube Goldberg machine you want to build with it, you should be able to build it with Tokenly. And again, the idea is that we're providing this base level of functionality for tokens that they don't naturally have by themselves. The type of Rube Goldberg machine that we've built is this editorial, content creation thing with the ability to do retail things. And again, like we've got a project that takes the concept of token controlled access and applies it to virtual video conferences online, and just like all kinds of just stuff that we need. And so we're building these tools. But again, the project is out there for everybody. So the idea here is that we're not even trying to be, we're not trying to monopolize these features in the slightest. They're features that everybody should have access to. And by everybody creating the platforms that they want or joining the platforms that they think is the best one is out there, we create an environment where all of this stuff is actually in use, as opposed to now where it's not.
I have to say, I mean, all of this, capitalism, sounds like a market that would be very, very difficult to rig in such a way that you can make exorbitant profits while selling an inferior product, or spread propaganda over the media and, I don't know, manipulate. This sounds really, it sounds really un-American, Adam. I don't know what's wrong with you. Why are you coming up with these crazy ideas? I think the system we have right now is pretty good. It's certainly good for shareholders.
Like I said at the beginning, this stuff isn't a panacea for human behavior. What it does do is it creates systems, and again, it's just like cryptocurrency in that it lets you create systems and create logic where the rules can't be changed once they're started. By doing that, by being able to lock the core selectively, and again, like Stephanie, you weren't here for the interview, but we did an interview with Preston Byrne about Eris Industries recently. And part of their offering is the ability to essentially roll blockchains that have the ability to change their core mission. At the group can agree to do that. So instead of needing to do a hard fork, you need to just get the commitment, and then the smart contract that runs the whole thing is essentially replaced.
Adam, I think you're not the only one with this idea. And it's kind of interesting to look at, for instance, IBM. They're starting to talk about Adept, which is this Internet of Things, blockchain-based system where they're talking about not only smart homes, but like smart cities where everything's connected. And that just terrifies me. I mean, I actually heard a guy come out and say, well, wouldn't it be great if we could just turn off your water? No, it wouldn't. I mean, maybe if your house was flooding would, but not if they want to like get you out of your house for some reason, if you're holed up in there. No, it wouldn't be great if you could turn off. Wouldn't it be great if we could just shut down all the travel, like all the driverless cars in a whole city? Wouldn't it be great if we could just shut all the lights off so we can do some police raids or something like that? And that's the thing that freaks me out. And I'm glad that there are people like you who are interested in this technology. But when I hear stuff like that, it's important to remember that technology is always going to be a double-edged sword, and it's always going to be able to be used for things that you like and things that you don't like. And some of the potentials for hugely high levels of automation introduces potentially some new problems that we have to be aware of.
It depends if you're doing it in a centralized fashion or a decentralized fashion, because I agree with you. Right? I mean, like, so
it's all about who has the power and who has,
It's about how distributed is the power, right? So driverless cars are terrifying in that if all of the driverless cars can be communicated with and commanded from, a single or multiple modules or what the hell ever, if you can do that and you can centralize control, then yes, that's terrifying. But if driverless cars are all autonomous, they have their own prime directives, Isaac Asimov's laws about how robots can behave, and you administer those from a central on-high authority, then all you need to do to compromise all the robots is to compromise the on-high authority. But if instead it's encoded into each individual robot that's out there, then that's a much, much more difficult task. You need to actually go out, track down each individual robot and change it. And that's what we're building with Tokenly, is something like that, where you're not supposed to use Let's Talk Bitcoin for other platforms. You're supposed to create a new version of it, and lots of people are supposed to do that. And this, again, the decentralization goes all the way down the chain. Another thing that we're doing is we're separating the ability for the platform to control things. That's another part of what token-controlled access is by disconnecting fundamentally the administration from the access, right? The access is now governed by a token balance rather than by some arbitrary, checkbox that somebody put next to somebody's name in a database. If you can do that, then you can, again, make it so you have all of these additional separations. And so what you are able to do is take the security that is inherent to Bitcoin and essentially just slap it on top of nearly anything that you want to do, so long as you put it behind a token. Of course, people can still be intimidated. Of course, it's not a panacea in any way, shape, or form. It's just a much better way of doing what we already do.
It's an interesting experiment. I think a lot of this actually is a useful way to shake out the bugs and find the weaknesses in all of these systems, and whether you're applying it to do better content management and publication within a syndicated media show, or more broadly, you expand uses of these technologies for the hospitality business or the self-driving car business or whatever else we're going to do in the future. The good news is that the technology is far from capable of delivering either the utopian wonderland or the totalitarian nightmare that opponents and proponents imagine. But what it can do today is certainly give us some new and interesting decentralized methods of automating things, as well as experiment with these things. A lot of these experiments are most likely going to fail. It's certainly not going to deliver shareholder value or return on investment for the tokens. But I love the idea that we can start experimenting with broader and more interesting ways of doing things than we have in the past.
Well, the non-monetary use of tokens, I really do continue to think that is going to be it's going to be a defining battle. Technology absolutely can be terrifying, but a lot of that has to do with who it is that's driving the vision for what it is that technology looks like. Is AI terrifying or is AI liberating? It really, really depends on who you're talking to, and a lot of what their position is depends on what their interests are. So I think that there are a lot of people who are working in Bitcoin who think that this is really, really, really the important time to be out there trying to make the vision that could be very clear. because it totally doesn't have to be like that. It totally could be some, crazy dystopian thing. You're completely right. But it doesn't have to be. And a lot of it is about who's doing things and what is being built. Because ultimately, Bitcoin is a tool. It's a set of rules. It's an agreement. It's a ledger. It's a protocol. Anybody can use it. So that means that more good people got to use it than bad people. That's what we're attempting to do, is add automation so that people who don't have the money up front to do things like sales or to do things like, all of this stuff that we ran into that we really didn't have the money to do, and that I wanted to make easy so that I could just focus on the content creation and helping other people with the content creation. The other stuff could just be automated and work itself out. And it doesn't mean, again, it's like the automation thing. Like, yeah, sure, the automated system is more difficult, but that's why we don't mandate that everybody work with it. We just present it, and then people who work with it as deeply as they want to benefit from it. And the deeper they go, the more money they're able to make or the more money they're able to save, depending on their position. And there is still, no content is being generated by computers. No content is being edited by computers. No content is being judged by computers. All of those are roles within the system that are roles no matter who does them. And so the concept of what is a job and what is a career, I've said this before, starts to look really different when you start thinking about platforms like this, where you don't need to have a contract with a platform. All you need to do is have a little bit of time, or have the sufficient time to do whatever it is, go to the platform, participate in whatever way is incentivized, and then get paid for it, at the end of the day or at the end of the week. I think that that's really what the new type of job looks like, and the things in the past that we've called jobs will really be more thought of as careers, because there will be something that you choose to do over and over and over and over and over again and specialize in. That's my take on it. So I'm not concerned about the automation leading to jobs and the collapse of civilization. I just think that it's a morphing. It's apocalypse in the classic sense. It's a rebirth. Thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Today's show receives support from CryptoKit.com, the easiest, fastest way to send Bitcoins right from your browser. And Swarm, fund the decentralized revolution at swarm.fund. Content for today's episode was provided by Adam B. Levine, Andreas M. Antonopoulos, and Stephanie Murphy. Music for today's show was provided by Jared Rubens with the LTB theme song, and Chris Wheatley, who provided a neat rework of Niles Fromm's song, Me. This episode was edited by Adam B. Levine. Have something you want to talk about with the Tokenly team? Email team@tokenly.co. See you next time.